Alright YouTube, it's time for a video on what Satanism is, what Satanism is not, what it represents to me, how it's useful potentially if you're interested in it to you. I've had a lot of people lately asking me to explain Satanism to them, and of course a lot of those beliefs are actually already in video form, but people have questions about Satanism. They want me to explain how it can particularly help them in their lives. Now, several hundred people already, that's not an exaggeration, have come to me asking to become Satanists. And one thing I have told them, in a rudimentary fashion, is Satanism is not a final step. Satan is, at least to me, now you've got to understand, my form of Satanism, my understanding of Satanism, I'm not a member of the Church of Satan. I'm not a member of the Temple of Set. I'm not a theistic Satanist in the strictest sense. I've got my own type of Satanism. I don't give it a specific label because I don't think it can be labeled. It's an intellectual Satanism. It's an elitist Satanism. It doesn't believe that everyone is capable of becoming a Satanist, although it encourages them if they want to try. And if it doesn't work for them, it doesn't matter. They can do whatever makes them happy in their life, and they're still, in a way, living a satanic lifestyle just by doing what makes them happy. The purpose of Satanism to me, because I moved beyond, I was an atheistic Satanist, then I became, something totally different, and then now I no longer use the label of Satanist. I moved past that label when I realized that my own views, because I had studied all of these religions, all of these spiritualities, all of these forms of magic, all of these philosophies, I realized there was something more there that Satanism could not describe. That being said, I have moved past Satanism. I still encourage others, if they're willing and interested, to become Satanists. Here's why. Satanism, in a psychological sense, is best seen as an antidote. It's an antidote to the poison of, depending on what group a person has been a member of, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, other different associated groups, essentially the antidote to Abrahamism. And the reason for that is this. When you grow up, and I had this experience too, when you grow up in a Christian or Islamic specifically country, especially Islam and to a great degree Christianity as well, you are filled from a young age with fear. You're told to be afraid of Satan. You're told to be afraid of God. You're told to respect and fear your elders. You're told their word goes, listen to them, listen to the Bible, listen to the Quran, listen to the preacher, listen to the imam, pray, fast, go to sleep, don't masturbate, don't eat these foods, don't listen to this kind of music, don't watch this movie because it's satanic. You're given all of these ridiculous rules over your life. They don't make sense. They're not based on reason. They're based on superstition. From a left-hand path perspective, the way in which most, not all, that's something I'll get to in a later video, not all, but most Christians and Muslims and Jews practice their religion. It's superstition. It's superstition which doesn't actually work. Now there are, as I said, and I will explain it in depth later, there are groups within these religions that do understand what they're talking about. They have a much greater mystic connection. Satanism is, and this is my opinion, this is not something that I can quantify as a fact, I believe is the best way, used for a course of several years in a person's life, who has been filled with all of this fear and garbage from all of these cults, which masquerade as mainstream religions. They're really cults broken down into thousands of smaller groups. The best way to get rid of that religious brainwashing is to understand the concept of Satanism. It shouldn't be seen, again, as I'm becoming a Satanist, I'm going to stay a Satanist forever, I'll die a Satanist. It shouldn't be like that. What you should be doing is using Satanism with its philosophy of do what you want, Don't harm others in the process, obviously, for multiple reasons. Number one, they can harm you, and number two, it's just naturally, organically wrong. Don't harm others, but do whatever you want, and use your head. Think. Look, and I've told people, examine what you're afraid of. Examine what you've been raised to fear. Do you fear heavy metal music, piercings, black clothing, which are things that a surprisingly large number of people admit that they fear? Do you fear somebody if they walk down the street and they're wearing a black trench coat and they've got piercings and pale skin? Do you fear them? If so, you may have been raised and brainwashed to believe in neo-1980s style, satanic panic style, that person's going to go kill a cat and worship the devil. You need to get past your fear. You need to get past your apprehension. It's psychological buildup, and I've used this metaphor. A human being is a computer. When they're born, they come preloaded with a very small number of programs that are essential for them to be able to turn on and off, absorb energy, essentially just function. It isn't until later in their life when they're capable, then you give them programming that allows them to comprehend their surroundings, language and things like that, language and symbolism. Once they've been programmed with that, everything else that's given to them is completely artificial. Religion is like using a program from the 1980s and putting it on a modern computer. These are programs, these are ideas, beliefs that are completely outdated. And over time, an originally fairly good idea may have been corrupted by, metaphorically, by viruses, literally by simply human transmission and corruption in general, over time corrupted into something worse. What Satanism does is it forces you to go internally, and this should be the goal of everyone that I tell. If they want to become Satanists, this is what I tell them, and this is what I'm telling you if you're watching this and you've taken my advice and you've joined Satanism. What you need to do is not say you're going to stay an atheistic Satanist for the rest of your life. Just examine your life. Examine what you're afraid of. Who are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? What concept or idea or being? Are you afraid of the devil? Why? Have you been taught that the devil is a terrible being? Well, what if the devil doesn't exist? And I've given them the Doors proverb before, which I posted about on the Styx Hexenhammer 666 blog. There's the common dichotomous fallacy that it's either theism or atheism, when in reality theism is broken down into thousands of different groups. Even if you think you have the right religion, there are 1,000 other religions that claim only their way leads to heaven. So you haven't gained anything by becoming religious. You haven't staved off hellfire if any of the other religions are right. If anything, you're even less well off than the atheists. Satanism is not the end result. It's simply a way to clear your mind, to begin enjoying life. People, look at the average person on the street. The average soccer mom, the average 9-to-5 average Joe. These people do not enjoy life. Not in a realistic fashion. They think that they enjoy life. They might joke with their coworkers. They come home, have a few drinks, have sex. What a great life that is. No, it's not. They've got no connection to anything spiritual. They hypocritically will go to church every few weeks and pray to Jesus Christ, or they'll go to the mosque and pray, or they'll go to the temple and pray. They're hypocrites. These are the kind of people that fertilize their lawns and then say, well, the lawn's gotten so long, I better mow it. These people don't have a clue. They're sheep, they're zombies, they're not even worth a mention. They're never going to rewrite history. They're never going to do anything substantial. They don't have their own ideas. They're not capable of comprehending anything significant. They're not capable of synthesizing their own ideas, and very few of them are even capable of understanding ideas that have been synthesized by other people. They're the muddled, brainwashed masses. And they live in fear. Because even if they're not religious, they still probably go to church or they believe in some God. They've never bothered to examine whether that God actually exists. They just take it on a cultural token. I've had atheists claim to me before, well, at least the deists don't go around trying to convert people. They're not always afraid. Well, actually, they're worse than the fundamentalists. They don't even really believe in many times in their own god. They just sort of worship it anyways just because of cultural reasons. They're completely brain dead, and they don't even realize they're doing it. It's like somebody sneezes and someone says, "God bless you." Well, that person's not necessarily religious, but they're still saying it. I've given up saying it, by the way, for this reason. So if you become a Satanist, the goal is not to worship the devil or stay a Satanist. The goal is to use that to clear your mind and then look at all spiritual paths as I did. It doesn't matter, even if you return to the one you were originally in, you've removed that same fear. You now have the ability to comprehend it more easily. And as I said, there are Christians who understand the real Christianity. There are Gnostic Christians still in the world. There are Aryan, not Aryan as in blonde-haired, blue-eyed Hitler Youth, Aryan with an I, Aryan Christians in the world. They do exist. They're small in number, but they exist. There are Jews that practice Kabbalah. There are Islamists who practice magic. They do exist. These are the ones that actually understand the historical and linguistic applications of their religion. They understand what's metaphor and what's meant to be taken literally. They read from texts outside of the canonical ones, which they themselves have come to an understanding are legitimate. Most Christians don't even know that the Apocrypha exists. They don't know about the Book of Enoch. They don't know about the Book of Jubilees. They're just as valid as anything else that got canonized at Nicaea. But they don't read it, because they don't know it exists. They haven't bothered to explore their own religion. They simply take whatever their parents, whatever the preacher tells them, and incorporate it into their own lives. They're sheep. They're easily led. They simply are adapting the beliefs of other people. They don't make their own beliefs. They don't examine their own beliefs. They're oblivious to this fact. So use Satanism as a tool. Clear your mind of the fear. Clear your mind of all this confusing jumble. You don't have to get rid of fear entirely. You just have to acknowledge that it's there and try to move past it. You can't ever be a complete, Iron Man. I'm unafraid of everything. I never get afraid. If I saw a ghost right now, I'd just laugh and whack off. No, you'd still be afraid. It would take many decades of training not to be afraid of these spiritual concepts. I work past that every day too. I've seen things, and this is purely anecdotal, and I intend to make a full video about it later. I have seen demons. I don't pretend that they are demons in the Christian sense. I don't pretend that they are demons in the sense of malevolent beings possessed of a half-physical body that want me to do evil things, because it's not correct. You study the linguistics, I've explained it before, and that's not what a demon is. That's not what it means. I've seen ghosts before. Again, purely anecdotal. I don't pretend that they're actually spirits of the deceased, because they're not. Because that's ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. There are much better explanations. There are explanations within science for some of these things. I've seen magic work. I don't pretend to know all the details about exactly how it works, but I have myself seen it work. I couldn't be a Satanist anymore. But you need Satanism first so that you can clear your mind of all the clutter, because if you don't clear yourself of fear, there are a lot of paths that are closed to you. You can't be a cowardly magician. You can't be afraid and start practicing meditation and trying to release your Kundalini energy, because you'd start hallucinating and see something crazy and end up in a mental ward. You have to banish the fear before you can do these things. Even if you stay in Satanism, though, it still has its own added benefits. You will enjoy life more. Satanism does promise a better life for most of the people which adapt it. Why? Because Satanism teaches you to live life to its fullest. Christianity and Islam, they tell you, don't do this, don't do this, don't do that, don't have sex before marriage, don't whack off, don't eat these foods, pork, by the way, is delicious. I'm moving more towards vegetarianism myself, but bacon is still delicious, I will admit. Don't eat on this day because it's sacred to some carpenter in the sky. Don't say these words. Don't say fuck because it's a sin. Why? It wasn't even around then. simply means to have sex with somebody. Why is it a bad word? Nobody ever explained that. All these things you're not supposed to or not allowed to do without being punished for it. And that's nonsense. That's what Satanism gets rid of. It gets rid of fear. And it gets rid of the idea people usually, they conform to whatever they're told to do. They're told something's wrong for long enough, they honestly believe it's wrong. Well, they never examine why. They never examine if for them there's a reason for it not to be wrong. Satanism clears that up. It is a step. It is not a destination. It is an antidote, not a cure. You need it first. You don't have to have it first. You could jump into some other spiritual form outside of Abrahamism. But I found, and I'm sharing that with other people, I'm not trying to convert anyone who's not interested in Satanism already. I'm simply trying to educate those who are already open to accepting such a path. And Christians have said, oh, well, you're just trying to win people over for the devil. These people come to me and ask me questions. I'm not going out of my way to convert other people. I'm telling them I can help them convert if they're already interested. A common misconception. I'm not going to go out on a missionary journey for Satan. It wouldn't make sense to do it. I'd get laughed out of town anyway. Especially if I was in Kansas or, eastern Texas or something. But anyway, just a little bit about Satanism, what it means, what it doesn't mean. It is not a destination unless you make it so. If you choose to follow Satanism, and you can message me with any questions that you want about the subject, if you choose it, I can help you segue into it. At a later date, when you have banished that fear, if you want something else, I can probably help you with that too. Do you want to get into paganism of some form, Wicca or whatever? There are plenty of people who will teach you about these forms. I can teach you what I've learned and what I think is the right path for me, and you can try it out, and you may or may not like it. Or you can go to Buddhism or Hinduism or agnosticism. You can become whatever you want. Satanism is just to banish all of the other people's bad programming so that you are returned to yourself, and then you can more easily make a clear decision. That's all Satanism is. And all of these organizations, Last Word, Church of Satan, Temple of Set, whatever, bunch of charlatans. They want your money. They don't want to help you. Otherwise, they would not exist and actually be able to afford administrative headquarters. So don't bother with them, because they're a bunch of idiots that just sit around all day and run